Troy, a brutal war that lasted 10 years, betrayal, sacrifice, and decisions that changed the course of history. But what if you were the man at the center of it all? What if you were Agamemnon? What would your life have been like? Everything would have been very different, because your story never began like a fairy tale. From the moment you were born, you became part of the house of Atreus, one of the most cursed families in all of Greek mythology. In this family, thrones were never inherited without bloodshed. Betrayal, revenge, and endless power struggles had plagued your bloodline for generations. The curse, said to have begun with the crimes of your grandfather Pelops, only grew stronger with every new generation. Your father Atreus spent years fighting your uncle Thyestes for the throne. This was no ordinary family feud. Children were murdered, horrifying betrayals were committed, and the conflict shook the entire Greek world. In the end, your father was killed. You and your younger brother Menelaus were forced to flee Mycenae just to survive. Your refuge became the kingdom of Sparta. King Tyndareus took you under his protection, and the two of you grew up there. Over the years, you gained more than just a safe home. You gained powerful allies. Eventually, Tyndareus married both of you to his daughters. You married his eldest daughter, Clytemnestra. Your brother Menelaus married Helen, the woman who would later become known as the most beautiful woman in the world. That also made Helen your sister-in-law. Years later, after gathering enough strength, you returned to Mycenae. You defeated your family's enemies and reclaimed the throne. You were no longer a prince living in exile. You were Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, one of the most powerful rulers in the Greek world. Your kingdom was wealthy, your army unmatched, and even other kings respected your authority. The treasures of Mycenae were yours. Thousands of soldiers would march at a single command. Even the greatest kings considered your opinion before making their own decisions. Power slowly began to shape your personality. Your confidence was almost limitless. You were proud, ambitious, and fiercely authoritative. Once you made a decision, you expected everyone else to accept it without question. Because in your eyes, a king never hesitated. That attitude earned you enormous respect, but it also earned you many enemies. Even so, no one questioned your courage or your ability to lead. But the very qualities that made you great would one day lead to your greatest mistakes. Then one day, news arrived from Sparta. Paris, the prince of Troy, had taken Helen, the wife of your brother Menelaus, back to Troy. According to some accounts, he kidnapped her. According to others, Helen willingly left with him after falling in love. Either way, the result was the same. To the Greek world, it was an unforgivable insult. Your brother asked for your help, and as not only his older brother, but also the most powerful king in Greece, you called upon every ruler to join your cause. Before long, Achilles, Odysseus, Ajax, Nestor, and many other legendary warriors had joined your army. The greatest military expedition in Greek history had begun, and you became the supreme commander of the united Greek forces. But reaching Troy would prove far more difficult than you expected. Your fleet of hundreds of ships waited for days at Aulis. Not a single wind blew. The seer Calchas claimed it was no coincidence. You had angered the goddess Artemis, and there was only one way to appease her: sacrifice your own daughter, Iphigenia. According to legend, you lured her to Aulis by telling her she was going to marry Achilles. Until the very last moment, she believed she was attending her own wedding. But you were forced to choose between being a father or the commander of the entire Greek army. In the end, you chose your army. After Iphigenia was sacrificed, the winds finally returned. Your fleet set sail for Troy. And so began one of the greatest wars in history. By the way, your armor probably didn't look like this. It most likely looked more like this. But let's be honest, this version looks much cooler. For the next 10 years, you fought outside the walls of Troy. You won countless battles, conquered cities, and commanded the Greek armies as their supreme leader. But the greatest turning point of the war didn't come from the enemy. It came from within your own army. Driven by your pride, you took Briseis, Achilles' war prize, away from him. In response, Achilles refused to fight. Without the greatest warrior in the world, the Greek army suffered devastating losses. After months of bloodshed, Achilles finally returned to the battlefield. Years later, thanks to Odysseus's plan and the famous Trojan horse, the Greeks finally entered Troy. The city fell. The 10-year war was finally over. You had won. All you wanted now was to return home to your family and your kingdom. But there was something you didn't know. During the 10 years you spent fighting in Troy, everything had changed back in Mycenae. Your wife, Clytemnestra, had never forgiven you for sacrificing your daughter, Iphigenia. While you were away, Aegisthus seized power in Mycenae and began living with Clytemnestra. As you returned home, believing you would be welcomed as a victorious king, what awaited you wasn't a celebration. It was an ambush. Shortly after entering your palace, you were murdered by your own wife, Clytemnestra, and her lover, Aegisthus. And so, one of the greatest commanders of the Trojan War did not die on the battlefield. He died in his own home. You survived 10 years, surrounded by thousands of soldiers. But in the end, the person who killed you wasn't a Trojan warrior. It was your own wife.